Tuesday night and lots of fun. Shout out to my mate Wayne, of course, who'll be watching, fresh out of a little time in hospital. Hope you're feeling well, and I know how much he loves this combination. Make sure we keep the heart rate down, okay, mate? None other than the wonderful Linda Scott, Labour to her bootstraps, and James Ashby, one nation till he dies. All right. Now, let us talk about something here, which was in relation to the mushroom killer. Again, you know, my view is we don't mention the name of the killers. After courts have made their decisions, there will be a sentencing at some point, but there apparently was quite the debate inside the ABC newsroom about whether or not to show photos, which kind of were all over the front pages of the newspapers in the past 12 hours or so, which was photos that were taken of the person in the back of a paddy wagon, I think back in May, okay? Their concern was that this is a person in obvious distress, so why would we show it? Now, again, James, we know all of the parameters here about what we can and can't talk about, but it is a fascinating conversation that the rights of a person who has just been found guilty of murder are being discussed in newsrooms as opposed to who cares?
Yeah, I agree. Look, I would have been more worried about the double chin photo that they used for how many months of her standing beside the car. Look, none of the photos were flattering. But to think that, you know, they're worried about a photo that's, 9 or 10 weeks old. You know, I had to write to the ABC. This is going back probably a couple of years ago when Pauline Hanson had a tick bite or a wasp bite on her face. They continued to use that shocking image for almost a year. And it was like, why are you doing that? She didn't look great after a bite to her face. And they had more worry about a convicted murderer than one of our federal politicians. I don't get the ABC.
Well, look, again, yeah, Linda, very obviously, is it a woman in deep distress? Yes. Is it a person who has also been found guilty of a pretty heinous crime? Absolutely. So in my view, when you have to balance things out, there's only one choice, which is that's the photo. It's an honest recollection of a moment in time. What do you think?
Look, I know this will shock you, Paul, but I think the ABC News was on in my house tonight as I sort of was wandering around.
I have no doubt that it's playing out of every smart speaker in your whole house at all times. So you may have it as a doorbell.
I have to say I am not 100% sure, but I am pretty confident that they actually did use that image on the television
after much discussion.
But look, I mean, I think it's important to have these discussions, right? The right to know for the media is incredibly important for the public. That's a critical public interest duty. But, you know, when you're sitting at home watching television with your children and there are these series of graphic images or graphic stories, and I'm not just talking about this story here, it is confronting. And I do think, you know, we need to think about how we present the news in a way that's meeting the right to know, but also is safe and digestible for people. Look, I don't object to people having these discussions in editorial newsrooms. I think that's an important part of democracy.
I think if it's a random member of the public, if it's a person that's been charged, like all predetermination, these are, but once it's been, the verdict's been read, to me...
Let's call this out, right? The Australian media is different to international media. You know, this woman has been found guilty. It's a case that's been followed around the world. She has a right to an appeal. That means there still are debates about suppression orders in place, about what we can cover here in the Australian media. I do think the Australian media, by and large, gets this stuff right. And when we see overseas media, you know, that are throwing around all sorts of details of things that we have published here in Australia, I think by and large the Australian media does a pretty good job.
All right. Well, media, talking about media, I know there's always a limit to people, their threshold on these things, so let's get to something else. That nonsense, and it's been polite, right? It's an outrage. Of course it's an outrage. The people having dinner on the weekend in Melbourne because it's a Jewish restaurant. Oh, no, we must focus and we're going to come in and turn the tables over, intimidate people, all of this garbage, because our purpose is more pure than somebody's, you know, right to sit down in peace. Well, unbelievably, right, police were basically told, back off. Don't engage at that exact moment with certain people. In fact, let me read this here, right, which is the Police Commissioner, Mike Bush, who was sworn into the job last week, will join a new anti-hate task force established by Alan in response to the weekend's attacks at the synagogue, right? But police told not to confront protesters at the restaurant as part of the rampage. Now, a couple of people have been charged after it. Good. I hope there's many more. But we saw this day after October 7. The Sydney Opera House, right? Oh, well, because there's too many and because they might kick a door in and because they might cause trouble. No, they can march all the way down George Street, turn right, go down into Circular Quay. Oh, it's there, because we wouldn't want to upset. Garbage. James, as you know, when the police want to, they can crack down pretty hard. I'm pretty sure we were told about rings of steel that meant you couldn't leave your house for a couple of years. I don't know, it's in the rear mirror, but remember when they were literally trotting around with horses, giving people fines for being outside because of the communicable disease of the Wu flu. Now, fair dinkum, how does this not happen? You see something wrong happening, you nab them in the back. You don't wait back and go, oh, well, we'll let CCTV do it the next day. There's got to be a deterrent in policing, and I'm pro-cop.
Yeah, and so am I. And I think a lot of these police would love to get in there and break these things up, shut them down. Look, if there's a police force that's worthy of emulating, it's the German police force. They don't put up with this rubbish. They just drag them off the streets. If people want to glue themselves to roads, they get them off or they just rip them straight off. And this sort of behaviour should not be tolerated, because what it's doing is it's just instilling fear, not just in the Jewish community, but for anyone that may have been out at that restaurant. And when is the next one going to take place? And how much further will some of these protesters go? Because every time they get away with it, they get bolder and bolder and bolder. And this is the fault of a Labor government who just want to go soft on criminals.
And again, it's just this thing, Linda. Now, again, we have seen other examples when police confrontation has resulted in, allegedly, somebody about to lose an eye, right? No question about that in Sydney. But I just don't understand, the right of the public to live in peace. The idea, it's not that it was an individual choice, it was a direction. Police told not to confront protesters. The source for that is The Age. It's hardly the right-wing comment section of Facebook.
Well, look, I know that Lord Mayor Nicholas Rees in Melbourne is very concerned about this. He's shared his view, which is that police should have gone further. But as you say, Paul, we've got this terrible alleged incident in Sydney where a protester over the last few days appears to have had very significant damage to her eye. She's done an interview claiming that, the doctors have let her know that she may have lifelong vision problems as a result of that during a protest here in Sydney. So the right to protest, the right to free speech is incredibly important. I mean, newsflash, we've just heard James Ashby say tonight that he doesn't believe in that. He doesn't believe in allowing people
No, I didn't say that at all.
Protest.
It's when it gets physical and violent and it puts people at odds with others. When you strike fear into people, that's when it's wrong.
Think about Wayne. I don't want his
You should be ashamed of yourself for putting that.
Look after yourself, Wayne, but I still disagree with James Ashby on this.
All right. Now, James, quickly here, about the lion situation at the zoo in the Darling Downs. Now, again, people never hear the whole, grey of things. It's only black and white. I don't want this thing to shut down. But also, it's all very weird, some of the, we don't know something, but we know this detail. We know this, we won't tell you that. They're still offering this sort of experience where you can get up close and personal with the lions, where the photo, and again, I'm not saying this is going to be the experience for everyone, but the advertising photo is that you can put your hand through the fence. What's your thoughts as a proud animal lover and Queenslander?
Well, I lived in a zoo for 3 years, Paul. A lot of people didn't realise that. I lived in a zoo here for that period. And I must admit, look, most zoos have got a dangerous animal.
I just want to call that
I bet you will. You bite your
You've been to
tongue.
plenty of those state Labor conferences. They are zoos. Anyway, James, keep going. This is fascinating.
But most zoos have a dangerous animal, whether it be a lion, an alligator, a crocodile or a cassowary. In our case, we had cassowary and crocodiles, and I was petrified of getting in there. I think the thing here with any zoos, and I agree with you that experience should be taken off the website, but, these aren't zoos that are flush with cash like Taronga Park and they've got a whole media team and that sort of thing. So you have to give them some leeway there. But the reality is here, in any situation, complacency costs lives or it causes harm. And I think in this instance, maybe, just maybe, a bit of complacency was struck here, and unfortunately, she's lost an arm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to say thank goodness it's just the arm, but it is obviously a scenario that could have got way worse a lot quicker. I'm imagining, as a parent, Linda, no dangerous animals. We're not going anywhere. We're not putting hands through fences.
Look, I mean, for so many reasons, workers deserve to be safe at work. And this woman was allegedly, even though she didn't work there every day, a photographer.
Yep.
She was showing up to do some work for the zoo. Like, under no circumstances is it all right for anyone to come to work and lose an arm, lose a life, and yet this happens all around Australia.
Fair point.
On a way too regular basis.
Fair point. That's one of the best pivots I've ever seen. All right, but we're going to learn more. We're going to do like a multi-part series of James's life in a zoo, okay? Like, come with a story each week. I appreciate it. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, James. We'll see you all again very soon. All right, quick break. Back with the great Nigel Farage. Yep, there he is sitting for us in London. Oh, there he is, even on the TV. He'll be on the TV for real next. Hi, Nige.